everyone, welcome back to another episode of Vinyl Tales. Today I got two picked out for you. The first one is a song that was released by a group that wasn't expected to really do very good. Plus, the song itself was mislabeled and ended up with a different name than what it originally started with because of simple confusion. And it was thought to be about something that it was reportedly not even close to be about. The second one is a really fun song to listen to by a group that's got some pretty good hits, but this song in particular has a connection to one of everybody's favorite sci-fi films. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can guess what I'm talking about when I say sci-fi films. Because there's not a whole lot out there that absolutely everybody just loves. But if you want to learn all about both of these songs, stick around. We'll get into them here in a minute on today's episode of Vinyl Tales. To start off with today's episode, we have a song that was originally released on October 15th, 1970. It was released as a single for a group called The Supremes. Today, we're going to start off with the hit Stoned Love. This song was both their biggest hit during the Supremes' post-Diana Ross era, as well as their last number one R&B hit, only making it to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now you see, originally, the Supremes had built their popularity throughout the 60s with Diana Ross as the lead singer. Some of you may know them as Diana Ross and the Supremes instead of just the Supremes. But in early 1970, she left the group to start a solo career as simply Diana Ross. When she left the Supremes, the head of Motown Records at the time, a guy named Berry Gordy, pulled all those resources that he had been using to back the Supremes and to promote the Supremes. He pulled all of them off of the Supremes and he moved them over to help Diana Ross. And the Supremes just kind of got secondhand stuff. They just kind of got forgotten about. One of the things that they ended up with was all the best writers went to Diana Ross and hit Motown's bigger names at the time, whereas the Supremes got what was referred to as a less than accomplished writer by the name Frank Wilson. Even though the label itself didn't think that the Supremes would actually do all that good without Diana as their lead, they still continued to release songs and to release music. They were still releasing songs up until 1977, 7 years later after Diana Ross left them. And one of the first things that they did was when Diana Ross left, they replaced her with another lady named Jean Terrell. And now that they were a full group again, they went back in the studio and started releasing songs. After getting this new singer, this new member, and being assigned the less accomplished writer than the ones that they had been working with previously, they released the hit song Up the Ladder to the Roof, which was their first hit without Diana. Shortly after Up the Ladder to the Roof came out, they soon followed it up with today's song, Stoned Love, which was written by a 17-year-old for a talent show. The story goes that a teenager named Kenny Thomas took some of the songs that he had written and he entered them into a local radio show. It was the local radio station there in Detroit, where Motown is based, or was based at the time, was holding the radio talent show, and Kenny Thomas took his songs and entered them in there. While the radio station was playing these songs by Kenny over the radio, Frank Wilson, who had recently been put in charge of the Supremes, just happened to tune into the radio at the right time, and he heard them playing. He thought they were pretty good. And so Frank Wilson tracked down who the songwriter was that wrote these songs that he was listening to. And he coordinated up a meeting at the songwriter's house. And so he went to Kenny Thomas's house and talked with him and explained to him the situation. And young Thomas was sitting there playing some of the songs that he had written for Frank Wilson on a guitar that only had 2 strings. One of the songs that he chose to play was an unfinished version of what would eventually come to be known as Stoned Love. Unfinished or not, it still impressed Frank Wilson, and he really liked it. And so Frank Wilson left, and a few days later, he came back to Kenny Thomas's house with another member of the Supremes group named Mary Wilson. And of course, Kenny Thomas was ecstatic that a member of the Supremes was there to meet him in his own house. Well, after things got all coordinated, Frank Wilson and Kenny Thomas worked together to try and finish this unfinished song. And after a few of the lines were revised by Wilson, the song was finished, and they took it and they recorded it. When they recorded it, they did it in 2 parts. The first was in one of Motown's studios right there in Detroit. They recorded the music part with an orchestra of 30 plus people. And then after they had all the music recorded, they took the music out to where the Supremes were at in New York City, and the Supremes recorded the vocals out there in New York. The name wasn't originally Stoned Love. The original name that they had first picked for the song was just Stone Love. No D at the end of stone. However, after it got recorded, during the process of getting mixed and then getting released to the public and to radio stations, somehow there was a mix-up and a D was added to the name. And so even though it was recorded originally and simply as Stone Love, when it was getting mixed and released to the public, the mix-up changed it to Stoned Love. And this unfortunate name change would come to haunt the song for many years to come. The founder of Motown, Berry Gordy, actually hated the song. And he told the label executive, Barney Ailes, that before the song could be released as a single, Barney had to go out and arrange for some radio stations to agree to play the song over the radio before it could be allowed to be released as a single. And at first, this was kind of difficult because a lot of radio stations were apprehensive about playing the song because just going off of the name alone, a lot of people thought it was a coded reference to drug use. In reality, it wasn't, but because of the unfortunate name incident and some of the lyrics to the song, it was thought of as something that they were a little uneasy about playing over the radio. The young 17-year-old writer of the song, Kenny Thomas, it was a little better after he came out and he said that this song isn't actually about drugs. It's actually about the social issues at the time, including and kind of gearing towards the Vietnam War, which was going on at the time. He said that the lyrics are a plea for people to try and end the conflict and the animosity between each other, especially with the Vietnam War. The term stone love he picked to try and describe the concept of an unchanging bond between each other. Thomas said, quote, "Stones are forever. They don't break or come apart. Love will be here forever." One last thing about this song. If you look at the credits for the song, and you look down at the songwriter's names, there are two names there. This first one is Frank Wilson, the guy who Motown put in charge of the Supremes after Diana Ross left. The other one both is and is not Kenny Thomas. It is Kenny Thomas, but he did something different with his name instead of just writing it out. What he did was he put his name backwards. And so, instead of Kenny Thomas, it says Yannick Samat. And he added an E in his first name to help with the pronunciation. So it starts out Y-E-N. He did this for two reasons. The first was that a couple years earlier, in about 1968, Stevie Wonder did the same thing for one of his albums. Stevie Wonder released an album where he didn't put his songwriting credit, he put the name of the album as his name backwards. The album's name is A Vet's Red Now, which is Stevie Wonder backwards, and Kenny Thomas thought that was a cool idea, was to put your name backwards on an album. He thought that was pretty cool. And so he was kind of imitating Stevie Wonder. The second reason as to why he did that was because his idol at the time, one of his favorite singers at the time, was a lady named Nina Simone, and he thought that his last name turned backwards, pronounced as Samat, sounded pretty close to Simone, and since she was his idol at the time, that was yet another reason for him to stick with putting his name backwards. But yeah, Stoned Love was initially written to be included in a radio TV talent show. The name was unfortunately changed from what its original name was. And what it's actually about is not even remotely close to what people initially thought it was. But it's yet another story of a group that was thought to and expected to not do very good, but still releasing hits. But that's just the first one. Stick around for just a little bit more, and we'll get into that second one that I said was very closely connected to one of everyone's favorite sci-fi films of all time. It's just one of them sci-fi films that you just gotta love. So, here we go. Here's the second one for you, everyone. Released on June 17th, 1985 by a group called Huey Lewis and the News. This song is the theme song for one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, Back to the Future. The song is called The Power of Love. Originally, when the movie Back to the Future was being put together, the film's production team approached Huey Lewis about writing a theme song for the film. This meeting, of course, included Huey Lewis, but the people from the movie that came to talk to him were Bob Gale, Robert Zemeckis, and Steven Spielberg himself. The idea that they had was the band that was playing the theme song was supposed to be Marty McFly's favorite band in the show. Huey Lewis was, of course, flattered by this idea that Huey Lewis and the News they were wanting Huey Lewis and the News to be Marty McFly's favorite band. But Huey turned down this opportunity at first because he didn't know how to write theme songs for movies, and he didn't want to write a song called Back to the Future. After some negotiating, and Robert Zemeckis told Huey that the song that they intended to use for the theme didn't have to actually be about the movie. It could be whatever song he wanted. Well, then, of course, after that, Huey Lewis agreed. And he just submitted the next song that he happened to write, which was The Power of Love. Even though the song has absolutely no mention of the storyline of the movie, they still accepted it and put it in the movie. It's got two main appearances in the first movie. The first is an early scene in the film, towards the beginning of the movie, when Marty McFly and his band, the Pinheads, they're auditioning to play the high school dance. Marty starts to play the beginning of the song, but before he can actually get to the lyrics part and sing any lyrics, one of the teachers that's sitting in the auditorium judging these auditions stands up and stops him. He says, "I'm afraid you're just too darn loud." Well, come to find out, that not only was the song Marty McFly was playing in this little audition, the intro to The Power of Love, the person that played that teacher that stood up and interrupted them, apparently uncredited, but the person that played that teacher was Huey Lewis himself. Turns out, the real reason that Marty McFly gets interrupted and told to stop playing before he can actually sing any lyrics for this song wasn't because it was written that way. Sort of. But it was actually because the song was unfinished and didn't really have any official lyrics yet. Because at that time, Huey Lewis had only submitted a rough mix of the song. He hadn't finished it yet, and he had dummy lyrics just to sit there and hold the place of the real lyrics until he could come up with some actual ones to put in the song. So the song wasn't actually finished. It didn't really have any lyrics yet. And that's why Marty never sings any lyrics to the song. Later on, by the time the song was finally finished, the movie had already been all shot and recorded, and it was in post-production. Well, since the movie was already in post-production, most of the scenes had already been mixed. Most of the movie had already been edited and put together. And so they kind of were really limited as to where they could put this song in the movie, because they still wanted to put the whole song in the movie. So they ended up putting it in the scene to where it's another scene at the beginning where Marty is riding his skateboard to school. The scene doesn't really have anything to do with The Power of Love, but they went ahead and put it there because it seemed to fit the vibe of the scene and work well in that context. And so they put it there and it stuck. But this song was also in the sequel. I mean, if you're going to have the theme song for Back to the Future and then you're going to make another Back to the Future, of course you've got to bring the song with you. And so in Back to the Future Part 2, after they've gone to the future and the 2015 version of Marty McFly gets fired, shortly after he gets fired, he picks up a guitar and he tries to play a song on the guitar, albeit rather poorly. Well, the song that he attempts to play poorly on the guitar was The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. Turns out the reason that his version from the 2015 Marty wasn't doing all very good was because that Marty, back in '85, had been in a car crash and severely injured his hand. But yes, the song was still The Power of Love by Huey Lewis. But this song's lifespan isn't yet done. I mean, there are 3 Back to the Future movies, aren't there? And of course, you gotta have Back to the Future's theme song coming with you. So, when they went and they made Back to the Future Part 3, they put this song in it yet again. Of course, this time it wasn't in a very outspoken spot. You kind of had to be listening for it. Towards the end of Part 3, where Needles and his friends challenge Marty to that fate-determining car race, if you listen to the music that is played inside of Needles' car that he's driving. The song that is playing inside of Needles' car is The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. But like I said, you kind of have to be paying attention for it. Otherwise, it's just another song being played in the background of the scene. Because it wasn't a very pronounced spot in the movie by then. Because of course, this is the end of the third movie in the series. But yeah, The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News is technically thought of as the theme song for the Back to the Future movies. Originally written simply because they wanted a song that sounded good. But yet, even though it's called the theme song, it has nothing to do with the storyline of the show itself. Go figure that one. But that's all that I have for you today. We got Stoned Love by the Supremes. That was written for a little radio talent show. The name was unfortunately changed through a mishap during the labeling process after it got recorded. And it had a little bit of trouble getting out to the public because of what people initially thought it was about. And then we got this one, The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. That was written for the movies Back to the Future and used as a theme song for throughout all three of them. But I'm sure there are a whole bunch more stories out there. So if you can think of anything else, any other cool stories for songs or albums, it doesn't matter what genre, it doesn't matter what age. I even got some 78s picked out for you to talk about. Them things are pretty old. Just feel free to leave their name or what they are down in the comments, and I will look into them. They may just be something for the next episode, you never know. But I'm Brandon. This has been Vinyl Tales, where we spin tales about vinyl. And I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.